Hey friends, it's another Thursday, and instead of Inside Star Citizen, we're doing a Journey to 4.0 video about the game this week. It's a design brief. I want to preamble this with, I am excited for engineering gameplay. I'm freaking pumped for this. I think this is one of the most important parts of gameplay in Star Citizen as a whole. So this is a very big deal video we're about to see, and big deal development that's going on with this feature and multi-crew gameplay and all that. I was kind of hoping this would be a design brief about something a little further out, though. I mean, I know that engineering might be close or far or whatever we'll end up seeing in this video. But the last design brief we got was for investigation missions, which were shown alongside another video about this engineering gameplay. If you scroll back to where Star Citizen is, you'll see that this was a design brief, and it was shown in the same day as another talk about this engineering gameplay. So it's a little bit disappointing to me that we're going back to engineering gameplay. It feels like they now have a design actually figured out. I would have preferred to have seen it back then, but 'tis the way it is. I do hope that we hear a lot more depth from this. I hope it goes into much more detail than what we got before. I'm sure it will. So let's get into it, see what they've got for us. Like I said, I'm excited for it. Just wish this could have been like long distance probing or something. Either way, let's see what it's going to be.
At CitizenCon 2952, we debuted a new recurring initiative called Journey to 4.0, where we kept a bit away from our traditional weekly behind-the-scenes format of Inside Star Citizen to tell stories at various points of progression leading up to the next major milestone in our continuing development after 318. And one of those more different within that batch were called Design Brief Investigations, where we looked at the earliest phases of a feature that only existed at that time in the text and crude diagrams of a planning document. And no, before you ask, don't ask to see the planning documents. It's all just fidelities and bespokes all over the place anyway. I'm kidding. Mostly. So on this next Journey to 4.0, we're diving into another design brief that's been discussed, debated, kicked around, pitched, and repitched over the years internally, imagined and theory crafted for just as long by the community, and has finally now been signed off by the multitude of game directors to become the next stage in the resource management system. So, without further ado, we present to you Design Brief Engineer, the next fundamental component of true multi-crew gameplay. Oh, I'm sorry, and one more thing. Fair warning before the comments come in. Since this next step in the resource management, now called engineer gameplay system, exists mostly in design stage at this moment, we did let Will, Dave, and Alex on the ISC capture team get creative in visualizing the stuff that's being discussed and that's still being built out by the developers at the moment. So what you're about to hear is still very much work in progress, but what you're about to see at times is the content of crazy people, and you should judge them because they're exactly like me. Sorry.
Trying to see something wild. So it sounds like last time we heard about it was like, okay, this is the tech, and now they're like, okay, this is the profession the tech will be a part of. Gotta be what it's gotta be. Look at this crazy people content.
What is your role as an engineer? You, as the engineer, are responsible for the resource management of your ship, the priorities of the items, and you are also responsible for countering any dangers that you might encounter throughout your flight. A big part of your job as an engineer is dealing with dangers that affect the mechanical parts of your ship and are different to the ones you would face as
There's your repair laser, everyone.
a pilot. There are 3 types of dangers that you will face as an engineer. One being something that you already know, which is overheating. The second being wear and tear. And the third one being malfunctions. So overheating is not only items running too hot, but it also is item running too cold. And the way that you can counter that is either actively or passively, where passively is something that we already do with the cooler on your ship, and actively being something like you standing in front of the item and using your fire extinguisher to bring down the temperature of the item. And if it's too cold, you can use a flamethrower or blowtorch.
Solid.
So wear and tear is a danger you might have already heard us talk about in the
I've had so many situations where the burritos on my ship were too cold, and the flamethrower is exactly what I've been looking for.
past. It's just something that the longer your item runs, the less efficient it will be at some point. So a general maintenance will be required to keep them up and running. And then there is the new one, which we call malfunctions, which we'll talk about later in more detail. But the way that you react as the engineer there is unique to each malfunction. All three dangers contribute to the health of the item and have an impact on each other. So since the first two are quite easy to grasp, let's dive a bit deeper into the malfunctions. Different items in different situations cause different errors. And while I can't talk about all of them today, here are some currently in development. There's disconnect, where you either don't have a relay right now in the place, or you don't have the item right now at the item port. Then there is power drop, where certain or the required amount of power doesn't reach the item. Then there is misfire, where wear and tear impacts the functionality of your item. Then there is cloggage.
That guy's suffering from cloggage for sure.
Where
Look at that. That's a clogged walk.
resources are prevented from reaching your item. There's also power surge, where high energy reaches your item and will negatively affect the function of the item. And then there is leakage, which is similar to cloggage, where resources won't reach
Guys, what?
your item, but the cause is a little bit different. Then we have unresponsive, where you as the engineer try to communicate certain changes on the item and they will not reach the item. There is bugged, where we have the most experience with
What? Dude, I can't even pay attention to what he's saying.
being creative, so be surprised for what comes your way. And then lastly, we have destroyed, where you just lost your item. Bug can also be caused by hacking or being tuned incorrectly.
Hey!
Why do we introduce malfunctions? The reason is
Hey!
Wait, is that janitor tier 2? Wow. Little sneak peeks.
why do we introduce malfunctions? The reason is quite simple. It's something that you know from your real life. Like after a while, certain things start to malfunction. So you better pay attention to those malfunctions and know
like
how
my
to react to
computer.
those. So your job as an engineer is preventing those malfunctioning from actually happening, or preventing the dangers that they create on your ship. And if you don't react in time, you might end up with cascading of errors that will in the end lead to the failure of your ship. It allows us to have the engineer being as important on bigger ships like the pilot or the gunner. We want to make sure that there's plenty of things to do for you as an engineer. Your job as the engineer is also understanding the items. And that means you have to understand the different states an item can be in. States are basically stages for the items inside your ship, where each item has its individual stages or states it can be in. Where, for example, you can have items that have a boot up phase. Then they have that is followed by an ignition phase. where you have to ignite something so that it is going into the idle state, where it is basically waiting to go into the active state, where it starts to produce the resources that you actually need. Then from that active state, it will probably, or some items might go into the primed state, where you have to fire something out. Example is here an EMP that can then go into a cooldown state, where you basically have to wait for the item to cool down again and then to be restarted or turned off. This adds a new level of complexity to you as the engineer, where you not only have to pay attention to the dangers, the malfunctions when they appear or where they appear. It's also important on which item they appear and in which state the item currently is. Because depending on the state the item currently is where the malfunction happens, it might end up you having to switch the item to a different state to be able to fix the malfunction or counter the malfunction, or even turn off the item completely because the current state requires you to restart the item completely. And yes, for some things it is as simple as turning them off and on again.
Straightforward. Okay. I mean,
all of this we do to make the engineering gameplay more engaging. We still want to allow players to maintain their ships on their own, but especially for bigger ships, we really want to introduce meaningful interactions so that you decide to have...
I think that's an important clip there. So one of the things that they had mentioned last year in terms of the ships that they were testing this with, they had talked about the Hammerhead, the Hull A, and the Ares. And the Ares was confusing, and I think people were thinking that may have been an error, or like, what's the deal with that? But I think this is showing that like this isn't just about making sure your life support is good or running throughout a ship and doing stuff. This is about the components in general. And this could mean that they're focusing more on components and physicalization, as we've also seen in the monthly report. So maybe hopefully we'll hear more about component physicalization when this sort of stuff is being implemented into the game. They're also showing one of the, I believe, refinery outposts over here in the background, which we've only seen in like white and gray box stages. This looks a little more final art. You got some lighting over there. This is going to be a site of gameplay. This is going to be a place where you can go in and do other resource network stuff. Actually, I hope they talk about engineering gameplay when it comes to ground locations and space stations, but I'm guessing for the first version it'll be just ships.
Especially for bigger ships, we really want to introduce meaningful interactions so that you decide to have several engineers on your ship. And for that, we introduced the 3 types of hats that you can wear as an engineer. The 3 basic...
That's also nice. So you're not just going to have 3 people running around doing the same thing.
Engineering types are tuner, mechanic, and manager. So the tuner is the person that is responsible for your strategic decisions. The tuner is responsible for setting up the items in advance depending on what you want to achieve with your ship. So if you want to go exploring, you ask the tuner to bring the items into a state that they are less prone to wear and tear, that they sustain longer, that they can or are more energy efficient or resource.
This is probably going to replace overclocking that we have right now, which we're all very used to. And just goes to show once again that a lot of the systems in this game are temporary. They're in a place that's meant to hold us over until they can get the actual functionality in game. Another big example of this being soft death and the fact that eventually we'll get physical damage and armor to replace the soft death system.
Efficient. The tuner defines item groups, base resource consumptions, responsibilities or roles on your ship, as well as setting new min and max performances for all the ship items you have. So overall, the tuner is a very proactive role where we want to reward players who plan their crew activities in advance. We did plan the tuner to be
This is a whole bunch of kind of RP going on the screen right now that I know is just like it says in the bottom, visual conceptualization. It would be cool if it worked like that, but you know, I think something like this where you have to go you're outside the ship and testing the parts. I don't think that's actually what they're getting at it's going to be, but it's a cool vibe. And maybe it will be
more relevant in advance of your adventures. But I'm sure players will figure out ways to make use of the tuner in various scenarios. The next hat you wear as an engineer is the mechanic. The mechanic plays into your fantasy of what you imagine when you think about sci-fi and the role as an engineer. It's like, in Star Trek terms, the person running around or crawling through Jeffries tubes to fix any item. Or in Star Wars terms, Chewbacca handing you the Hydro Spanner to fix up the Millennium
Oh my god. These freaking facial expressions.
Falcon. You are responsible for fixing fuses, figuring out what the details of the malfunctions are. You are analyzing the situation on site. So you're going through all the rooms, finding the item that you were just called out on that needs maintenance, needs repair. Depending on the item or the situation, you as the mechanic have to react individually to it, which can be a minigame-like character where you have to fix something that is unique to the malfunction that you are facing. The manager uses the engineering that is unique to the malfunction that you are facing.
What is going on here? I'm pretty sure that's somebody wearing a costume too. I don't even think that's an actual person. Hold on, can we freeze that frame? That's a hard one to get.
Unique to the malfunction that you are facing. The manager uses the engineering screen to analyze your state of the ship, and they dispatch mechanics or the tuner where need arises, and can even assist with fixing certain malfunctions. They manage the resource consumption via the presets the tuner prepared or manually controlling the resource distribution, and they work together with the bridge crew to ensure a successful operation of your ship.
It's a conceptual visualization, but if I'm going to see a quantum travel effect here, that is kind of what it already looks like, actually, besides this blue flare that goes up here. They're starting to talk more about bridge crew. This is a huge deal. You don't have to fly ships to like this game. And that's what's finally starting to be built out with the salvage stuff that's coming on, with obviously mining that's been a thing for a while, with manual loading and unloading of cargo, now the engineering gameplay, and what else is there? I mean, we're also looking at, there's a couple other things I think they've talked about, but really in terms of immediate implementation, this is what it's starting to feel like. Like, you're not going to have a ship and fly it around all the time to have fun or get involved. You could be on somebody's crew. You could be down in somebody's engineering section. It's nice.
I'm really happy that I'm actually sitting here and explaining you all the things that I just described to you, because the entire process that we had to went through was daunting, to say the least, because we are touching so many bases with so many teams. So it's a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, a lot of different opinions of what the engineer should be. And now we have it written down, we have it nailed down, we know what we want, we have defined goals, what the gameplay actually should be about, and everyone agrees. So that allows us now to move forward fast and deliver the feature that we all have been waiting for. You, me, everyone, like Jared. It's something that we are really looking forward to, how it will play out, how you as a player will interact with the entire system, what you like, how where you will bring your ships that you own and what you can make out of them, how different they will actually feel to what they are right now in terms of stock versus you have the perfectly tuned ship for your demands. And this might come sooner than you think. This is the good news about it, because it all ties in with all the resource network work or resource management work that we have been doing so far. We are really excited.
That's the tell. I'm glad he said that. So this is like the content teams figuring out how to use the tech team's work, I think. Tech team did the resource network stuff. That's the power play thing we saw in November. That's like Dan Truffin and his team on the PU gameplay teams putting that stuff into actual engineered form, as we've seen over the last couple of years. This is more the content teams talking about how they're taking that tech they developed and putting it into an actual game loop. So we might actually see other things refer back to resource network work as the basis for what they're doing. This honestly sounds like this is the content team that's focused on getting them into ships, whereas there might be other content teams that focus on getting resource network stuff into outposts or space stations or stuff like that. That's kind of what I get from him saying that. So I'm glad he elaborated a little bit there.
To work on it right now. So it is in active development. And I don't want to do any promises when you will see it, but we are doing our very best that you will be able to try it out sooner than later.
No dates. But
look at his face. Look, this is a meme, yeah? Has anybody already turned this into a meme? Oh man. Like this is a dev talking about something they love. This is Jared looming over them. Oh man, there's gonna be great memes from this. I'll be looking out on Twitter for that.
it's really cool. So, what did we learn here this week? Well, we learned that...
Is that an Alien reference? Look at that face. That is the face of somebody who just wants to get their work done.
So, what did we learn here this week?
Nice, Pico. You know, by the end of this development cycle, Pico is going to have his own entire lore.
Well, we learned that the hopes and dreams of multi-crew players everywhere are taking their next major step forward right now as resource management evolves into engineer gameplay. That the design spoken about here today is currently in active development and will continue throughout the remainder of this year. And that we would normally have to wait months and months to share a story until we had the visuals for it. But I work with some talented, if kind of strange people who stepped up to make this week's episode possible now. And don't worry, you know we're going to be back to show you how engineer gameplay is actually progressing later this year. Engineering is the thing that brought me into the project, and I'm as excited as ever about what's being shared here. And as for Alpha 318, I'm being told, yes, there's a message in my ear. I'm being told that it's today. Has it happened yet? It's going to happen. But which one is it? You can't tell me because there's nothing in my ear, and we recorded this on Wednesday. We like to have fun. Check the website and socials for details. And thanks for watching the latest in our journey to 4.0. We'll be back with more Inside Star Citizen next week. So until then, I'm Jared Huckabee, and I don't have an outro for these J24 specials. Leave one in the comments. That'll be good.
Journey to 4.0 doesn't actually mean this is all in 4.0. I think that's a good enough outro. Honestly, that's kind of, the more we watch these Journey to 4.0 things, the more I'm like, it feels just kind of like a way to hype up 4.0 because there's all the things that we're seeing. If they put all of this in 4.0, I think the patch would probably explode. So I don't know. God, I don't know when this might show up. I was hoping it would be the October patch of this year, whatever that's called, whether it's 3.20 or 3.19.8 or 4.0. But with the design brief going on right now, I do think it's going to be a little bit longer than that. Probably just to be safe, I would guess not until like this time next year, but maybe it is sooner than that. Nobody really knows. Nobody's going to know. I think once we start seeing some sprint reports on this, when we start to see more of this talk in monthly reports, see it on ISC, then we'll have a better idea of when it might be coming. But overall, it's Obviously, with everything in this game, it's a bummer that it's taken this long, but it's here. This is a really big deal. Like, this is engineering. This is one of the foundational blocks of gameplay, I think, for Star Citizen. One of the bigger deals when it comes to gameplay. One of the things that definitely starts to set this game apart from other space sims. And with 3.18 coming out soon, TM, I mean, for me, it probably is today because I got to record this on Friday. But with it coming out soon, with Salvage starting to actually provide multi-crew gameplay, with the cargo refactor coming up later and actually making us think about what we're loading onto our ship and how long it takes and all that kind of stuff, it's starting to feel like the game is going to be taken more seriously. It's not just a testing bed anymore. It's a place to figure out what you enjoy, what you want to do, and how you want to make a difference. And that's what's always drawn me to Star Citizen. The fact that it is a space sim that doesn't require you to just enjoy ships. It offers a lot of choice, and it's really, really nice to see them talking in these sorts of terms about those choices we've been waiting for so long. Has been a long time. I've got qualms about that, but I'm glad that we're finally here. I'm definitely gonna have to watch this over a few more times. This is just like first impressions, and I missed a lot of it because I was too busy enjoying the visuals. So I'm gonna watch this a few more times, probably do a video on it sometime in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month or two. We've got a lot going on this month, and we'll probably talk about this on stream quite a bit. So make sure to drop by the stream if you want to get a longer conversation about this, ask some questions. We'll go into the history of where this all came from. And make sure to check out, subscribe here on the YouTube channel. We got a podcast episode coming out on Monday, speaking with Dead Leader, another YouTube creator, about Salvage, and it was a really good talk. It gets a little bit into this stuff, but it was a nice time. So make sure to drop by on that. Thank you for watching this. We'll talk more about this definitely in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward to this as much as I am, and apparently Jared is. And I'll catch y'all next week. Bye.